Welcome to the What's Your Revolution show, a show for men and the people who love them, where we discuss how men can find and embrace the revolution within themselves. Where people can find and embrace the revolution within themselves. I am your host, joined by my dude and my co-host, Dr. Travis Batts, and I am your man, the revolutionary himself, Dr. Charles Corporate. What's good with you? I hope all is well and that you are out here doing your thing in the world, man. Brother, they kill me because the revolutionaries be like, yeah, I'm doing my thing. I'm out here in the world, right? You motivate me. I'm doing my thing. I'm happy, but I want to hear from Dr. Batts.
No, they don't
I want
say
to.
that, do
I
they?
want to hear from Dr. Batts. They be like, "Yo, that show with you and Dr. Batts, y'all are killing it." You
Oh,
saw the
man.
text that I sent you today, right?
I
You know
did.
what I'm
I
saying?
did. That was
Yeah,
inspiring on multiple levels. And again, I just appreciate the fact that a good brother, a great brother, was able to utilize some of these strategies. Because, like I
that's
say,
what
the
it
show
is.
is more than just a show. It's a blueprint for how to be a better version of yourself. So
That's it.
thank you for allowing me to participate.
Hey, that's my dude. We call this recurring episode Revolt and Evolve as we think about our first tenet of how do you fulfill your revolution, right? You must revolt from who you are now and evolve into who you want to be the most revolutionary version of your size, your revolutionary version of your life. I feel like I'm in the minor leagues because it's been a minute, my dude. It's been a minute, my dude, since we have actually, had a chance to talk to each other. A lot
Hmm.
has gone on, and I can't wait to chop it up with you. But you know
Definitely.
what? The first question is always, how are you? How is Dr. Travis Batts?
Well, I hadn't done my usual update to my midwife, but it's been a whirlwind, my friend. I mean, I know that um, inspired by this show, I wanted to do more and engage more. My podcast is slowly evolving into where I want it to be, and literally just again taking a blueprint from this show and just meeting great people. But probably one of the more pivotal shows that I've had, and I haven't had a lot, was a show where I had, and I think I told you, a pastor who got divorced after 22 years. Um, Unfortunately, went into a deep depression, gained
Mm,
120 pounds, thought about killing himself. And he was told, go to the gym. Well, he went to the gym in May, lost 120 pounds by November, got his pro bodybuilding card in February, and he's a pro bodybuilder. So his
hmm
message was so inspiring. There's a group of guys, fantasy football, other coaches that heard his story and really just started to open up about vulnerability. And that's
hmm
not a space, even though this show has helped me walk in that space, that's not some place where I'm comfortable. And so what it did, it led to the development of essentially a platform called muscle therapy, where
mm.
myself, a pro bodybuilder, and a psychiatrist who's also a semi pro bodybuilder go to the gym. And, our first series will be on chest workouts. But while we talk about the fundamentals of chest workouts, we also will broach the discussion of depression. And
Okay.
so that's probably one of my more I won't say pet projects, but one that I'm going to enjoy, because as much as I'm going to facilitate, I'm going to be a student, just learning from an expert and from someone that's dealing. And then each month, we're going to touch on a different mental health topic. And again, the focus isn't only African American men, but I know in our community, there is a disparity. There is a huge
Yeah.
disparity.
Yeah. That's correct.
So that, just coming off of a great weekend. And one weekend, I did an international men's conference. I talked about lifestyle medicine. And then 2 hours later, I got to change and be Coach Bulldog. You hadn't met him yet, but he's an angry
No,
football
no,
coach,
no,
Coach
no.
Bulldog. I got
Yes.
blood in one eye and something in the other, and I can't see X, but I'm
The
going. And so I went out to the Indy Kaloo football camp. It was a free football camp in the San Antonio community. We had over 100 kids out there. I did a little bit of speed development, but got to launch another program that you inspired called ECA, or Everyone Can Assist. And it's a program where we teach emergency response, CPR, and AED use. And so the kids got to do what I call the Heart Saver Relay. It's where they do a series of exercises and then they find someone laying on the ground. They check for responsiveness, they call for help, and then they start CPR. And then they have to tag the AED, run back and tag their partner. It was a wonderful representation of those things. But again, one thing you've taught me is don't think small, Right. So it's been
Clearly,
great.
clearly,
Uh,
Dr. Batts, you do not think small, right? Um,
so it's been
Revolutionaries,
great.
I actually think that Dr. Batts is a Jamaican.
Me come
So
now.
I think Dr. Batts is a Jamaican, right?
No.
Because every time we get on this show, Dr. Batts is telling me about another thing that he has contrived and conspired to do,
Oh,
right? Next
listen
thing you
at
know,
you.
he's in the gym getting his gorilla chest on,
Hey,
like
hey.
getting his gorilla chest on, all the while talking about how you should not be depressed, right? Then
Mm-mm.
he says, I'm gonna go out. He sent me a picture the other day, Revolutionaries, and
Uh-oh.
I'm gonna
Don't,
post this
no.
picture. Look, I got
Please.
consent. I got consent. This will go. I want you to see all of the different forms
Oh, man.
that Dr. Batts takes. I don't understand where these wigs come from, but Mrs. Batts, Mrs. Batts,
Hey,
um,
hey.
yeah, yeah,
It
my
ain't
brother.
her
I don't.
wig. It's my wig. It's a performance, man. It's a performance.
Clearly, it's a performance. Look, we're gonna have to get you in one of these episodes to come in character. That's what I want to see. I want to see you come in character and be like, I am a
You want to see Boot?
Roscoe.
You want to see Boot Lee Collinsworth, man? What you know? What I'm saying I'm the smoothest brother. I'm smooth like duck butter.
You want to see Bootney Lee? I mean, I'm just saying that's my.
Dear God, revolutionaries. Yes. Maybe for the October show for Halloween, you can come in character. That's
You said
that's
you were
what
gonna
you're
do
gonna
the
do.
pictures. No, it was a great event. It was really to promote a great man, my pastor, Pastor Jerry William Daly of the Macedonian Missionary Baptist Church, his 70th birthday. And again, it was and the beauty of it though, and I know, and we'll get back on track, but we hadn't talked in a long time. So
No.
so revolutionaries, y'all just getting a taste of what happened when two friends hadn't talked in a long time. But what was actually probably more important to me was I came as Bootney Lee, but Bootney Lee had a few had people on his team. It was Bootney Lee and the Boogie Boys, and one of the Boogie Boys was my son. Right, so my son joined me. He actually did the choreography for the event. One of my I call him my nephew. He's about 6'1", great football player. He joined and they put on a performance. I just kind of watched them, but it was just so good to see them involved. And it was one of those things where when we look at church, right, it oftentimes excludes the youth. And what I wanted to do is say, hey, look, have them, they doing it to me a dance and all this. They can think of a choreography routine to celebrate their pastor. And sure enough, it went off without a hitch. I mean, maybe I'll send you the video, but you
Yeah,
might see it in
we
post.
need the video.
But yeah,
We definitely
yeah.
need
So it
Bootney
was
Lee
live. It was
and the
live.
Boogie Boys. All right, revolutionaries. Did you literally? We gonna tie this into an Instagram reel of Bootney Lee and the Boogie
And the
Boys.
Boogie Boys, yes.
I cannot wait for this. I
It was
cannot wait.
real.
So it sounds like clearly it sounds like that you have been doing extremely well. You've been doing your thing in the world,
Loving
as we
life.
say, right? And Dr. Bass's revolution is never just for him. And I think my question for you is we'll start off today is like, what's been the revolution? Like what's we're 6 months in, right?
Mm-hmm.
We are coming to the close of June, and I can't believe that, right? Um, I can't believe that. And I know we're going to have a little bit of a conversation about fathers and Father's Day, even though it's almost July. But we're 6 months into the year, and it goes by so fast. It
Right.
goes by so fast. But what's been your revolution?
Well, like I said, I mean, this show and our conversations, because if I don't have a therapist, and not to, and this, I don't want that to be the lead in per se, but it's one of those things where when you start to unpack intellectually and emotionally what that means, and you talk about it with someone else, it helps you to be very introspective
Mhm.
about where you are and how you are showing up for not only yourself but your family, your community, the people that count on you. And it forced me to really take a critical look at my why, right? Because at the end of the day, I love what I do as a profession. And
Mhm.
and I used to make a joke I would do it for free. But my wife helps me to see more clearly in that sense. But
Clearly,
it's not even
clearly.
about the number. It is about just, today seeing a patient who had lost his wife, and we've been, I've been their doctor for 12 years, and he
Mhm.
didn't want to see anyone else. And literally, I just came in the room and he just hugged me. And that patient didn't look like me, right? But the fact that I'm showing up in a way that opens up vulnerability for, someone like that. The fact that I'm involving my children in some of the things that I do and they're enjoying it. The fact that, and I told you this, that my goal is to teach young people, as many that will engage with me, not to necessarily have a job, but to learn and appreciate the ability to make money, right?
Yeah.
And not that
Yeah.
money should,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
how do you create value in your brand, which
Yes.
you are a
Yes.
brand. I mentored, there was a young lady from DC that flew down to visit her brother, and her brother said, you got to meet Dr. Batts, even if it's for a minute. And we talked for an hour about how to cultivate your own personal brand. And I mean, and there's so many different ways I can go, but it really, and I'll harken back to a show, right? That's the other thing that, being in this platform has forced me to kind of listen to the shows as a fan first, but then as almost an evaluator,
Yeah.
right? Meaning I listened
Yeah.
back to the Ramal Toon show, and in reflecting on that, he said something that was important in the sense where he talked about, as fathers, we oftentimes bring our trauma with us. And this helped me with
into the
something that I've
next
been
generation.
exactly. And when I think about my kids, like, it's one of those things where I grew up a certain way in a certain place. We had fans in the window. We didn't always have, it was what it was, but that's not my kids' reality. But I say, well, it's not making you tough. It doesn't make you be able to survive. That's not their reality. And so something that he said was to get out of this survival mind state and get into a thrive mindset.
Yeah.
Right. As opposed to just struggling to survive, help people thrive. And so if I said, what's my goal for the next 6 months? It is to do just that, to tell people that even though you're surviving, right, why not focus on thriving? And it's
And
hard
what
to
does
see the
that
forest
look
from the
like? What does
trees.
that look like?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I think a lot of people, whether you're a dad, a mom, a friend, because you've never experienced or at least conceptualized, I'm thriving right now. What is it? How do I create this framework to help someone else? It's hard, right? And that's what reflecting on that commentary, reflecting on that show has allowed me to do. And I initially went into it saying, okay, I'm going to get ready for our Father's Day discussion. I'm going to do that. But it helped me to really reframe how I show up for people. And I know that was a long discussion, and I'm going to be quiet because I want to hear the experts' commentary on it.
Oh, there are multiple. Yeah, revolutionaries know that I have multiple personalities, and it depends on what Dr. Pat says is what you're going to get. It's interesting that I want to pull out what you're saying, and remember, Dr. Pat, that this is a dual show, not just me asking you questions.
I know.
We coming. Um, what had me think is it's the irony of that I get a chance to see things that I can interweave into our conversation, and understanding what thriving is. And love him, hate him, whatever. Steve Harvey, right? Steve Harvey is my frat brother.
Mm-hmm.
And Steve Harvey, if you listen to his story, Steve Harvey has actually like moved up in the world. He's moved status, he's moved caste, he's moved, he's upped his game. His story will tell you that he was living in a car at some point in his life, right? But he figured it out. And I was listening to him, and it was, it wasn't TikTok, because I'm not a big fan of TikTok, even though we have a TikTok for the show. But maybe I was going through a Facebook reel or something, and I stopped to hear him saying, he was like, look, buy you a first class ticket. Like, not get upgraded like you and I do, because we fly so much, right?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Delta. Really, really love you. If you want to sponsor the show, come on. We would love, fly me anywhere, right? I love Delta. Been flying Delta for years. So not the upgrade, not waiting for the upgrade or complaining like, oh, why didn't I actually buy the first class ticket? Because what he was saying, Doc, is that when you buy the first class ticket, you never want to walk past first class again. He says it's going to be real hard to walk past first class again, right? And I know I love sitting in first class. Don't get me wrong, right? When I get that upgrade, when I get that upgrade on Delta and I get to sit in first class, oh, I love it. And then I'm mad when I don't get that upgrade. I'm mad, right? But and then he says, go out and buy you a nice suit, or go out and buy you something nice where you have to actually spend. And his theory was, when you do that, it forces your mind to figure out ways to get back to that, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so, look, I'm thinking about this Old Navy polo that I got on right now, and I right, an Old Navy polo that I got on. I used to wear polo, right? I used to wear like polo,
Mm-hmm.
but I was like, why am I spending this money, right, just for this little horse? You know
Exactly.
what I'm saying? But I'll spend some money on a nice suit. I'll spend some money on nice shoes, certain things. I think about value. But what I wanted to say is that if we can figure out what thriving looks like, we're going to go after it. And so I think what Steve Harvey said is right in certain is that we need to at least feel what thriving looks like. I know we have to define what thriving looks like. Do I really want that expensive pool stick so I can go get my butt kicked tonight, right? But I really began to think about that whole thing about being in first class and what that feels like. And I'll end this diatribe with this comment. There's a woman who I love. Her name is Robin Arson. She's the vice president of programming at Peloton,
Mm-hmm.
right? So again, all right, we just talked about Delta. Peloton, if you want to sponsor the show, we're right here for you. I'm getting my Peloton all
I
the
need a
time. Check
bike.
out my stats.
I need a
But
bike.
right, what she was, but what she says is that we have an opportunity when we see folks, right? People can see and look at us, Doc. They can look at Dr. Bats with the two ninjas that are outside of the door barking, with his lovely family, with his children and his beautiful home and his beautiful wife, the Queen, Mrs. Bats. Hey, Mrs. Bats. They can be like, you know what? I'm envious of that. I'm envious of that. They can say, hey, well, Dr. Corpor's driving that Tesla. He's got a 6-year-old podcast. He's got real estate. You know what I'm saying? He got that gray beard, you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Just,
Mm-hmm. Got
all
a
the
new
things.
studio. Got a new
Right,
studio. I
right. You
mean,
know what I'm saying? All the things, and be envious of the life that we may have. Or, as Robin Arson says, you can find it as motivation. You can say, you know what? I want to get there. How did they ask the question? How did Dr. Batts get there? How did Dr. Corprew get there? What are the things that they had to sacrifice? What does thriving actually look like for them? And how can I move in the space with them? Because I think there's a space, as you said, there's a space between envy and motivation. And we have to figure out how do
right.
we move in that space? Because I think that's the part of thriving. And I'll in there is you teach thriving, have people look at models and say, you know what? I can move in the spaces like Dr. Batts. I can move in the spaces like Dr. Corprew. I don't need to be envious of them because I can figure out how to move like them by talking to them, by educating myself, by being a constant learner like Dr. Batts is. And so I'll stop there.
No, I think you bring up a great point, and for the record, I don't fly first class. I'm a Southwest guy, so I try to get points, right? Because again, and I tell my
1 through 15.
yeah, I'm good as long as I'm up there, right? But
there's
I
only one first class seat on.
yeah, as
Hey.
I say, it is what it is. That is me. So Dr. Bass is regular. I'm regular. Now, what I will say, and so I'll encapsulate this by saying one of the first things, and this was on another show, I can't remember, and shout out to those that did it, but you talked about, or you and your guest talked about who's in your circle, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who are the individuals? And if everybody looks like you, if everybody's doing the same thing, there's something good about that. But you mentioned a group of individuals that you had the chance to meet, and they're millionaires, and they're this, and you're like, well, how do I do that? Well, and again, that's what I tell people. Sometimes still stay cool, stay cool with the people you are, but branch yourself out, get into different spaces where people are having different conversations.
Yeah.
And the example I'll give to kind of make it more colloquial is my wife and I, right? In the sense where my wife did not grow up, and she hates when I say she grew up a little bit different. And I remember when we got our home, she said we need a water softener. Well, I'm like, water wet? I don't even know how water can be
What is a
soft, right?
water
But
saw? What
yeah,
is a water saw?
water
Operations
softener.
defined. A
Exactly,
water
right?
softener.
Softener, right? And so for me, I'm like, water wet. I don't know how, but it was. And one of your guests, Krishana, I think is, if I don't remember her last name.
Kishana
Yeah,
Palmer.
Krishana, and she talked about small luxuries, right? Instead of
Yes.
a shirt that's, the same Hanes, hey, just buy something different. So it doesn't have to be first class, but it could be taking steps toward a strategy toward thriving. It could
Mm-hmm.
mean maybe not doing fast food and saving a couple of things and actually going to a restaurant that elevates your palate, right? Different things like that that really I would have been happy with, still eating my stuff out of a can and doing that and in the struggle and I'm surviving, right? But my wife said, no, 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 no. No, my brother, we're going to elevate what you think is
Yeah.
good and what is
Yeah.
comfortable. We're going to
Yeah.
elevate. And it wasn't a big jump. It was small things that helped me come to expect this is attainable. Oh, I can do this. And it is finding, and whether it doesn't have to be a spouse, it can be a friend, it could be a midwife, it can be a group of people that constantly pushes you to just take a little bit closer step. Because I think ultimately, and I don't want people to confuse, comfort with complacency. At any given point in time, I'm thinking of new things to do and I'm working. And I know that's true for you too. But at the same time, my work should expand my reach, right? Like if I'm
Mm.
working and I'm touching the same people, well, then how much of a grind am I really doing? It's easy to put that product out. But now that I'm looking at a different demographic, that I'm talking to people that don't look like me, that I'm reaching people, that international conference, there were people asking questions from Australia, right? And so it was a different
You
vibe.
heard
And,
that.
and
You
so it
heard that, Andy.
allowed me to change my mindset so that now I'm moving closer to those things to really reach more people and help more people and show up for more people. So that's the goal. That is thriving. And once, and it's not about cruise control. It's about shifting gears. Sometimes you got to slow it down. Sometimes you got to speed it up. But in any case, you're bringing people along for the ride.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things that I hear in that, Doc, is, and something that I've had to learn, right? Particularly as I've come off sabbatical, I'm trying to figure out what the next sprint of my life is going to be. Um, is that I had to realize that money is energy, and that to get out of the scarcity mindset, right? To think
Speak
about
on
that,
it.
that getting out of that scarcity mindset and the having a bit of luxury, because sometimes you just need to pay, right? You just need to pay for comfort. Sometimes you just, right? Sometimes it's like, yeah, sitting in the discomfort, sitting in the, is the growth. But sometimes, you know what? I need to go ahead and pay for that room. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? I need to go ahead and pay for that room, because what that energy of using that money is going to be for is going to allow me to, right, to rest so I can be better the next day, right? Or,
Exactly.
or to pay so I don't have to deal with something down the road.
Right.
And so once I got into that, and it's still a hard thing because my mother grew up as a child of poverty, child of the Depression. My father grew up as a child of poverty. You think 1929, 1940, right?
Mm.
Right, 1929, the collapse of the stock market, right? Black folks in the South.
Wow.
My mother was born in 1940. World War II is going on, and so depression is still going on, living in the rural South. So I grew up with two parents who held money like this. And so understanding now, like, I've got to spend money on my employees, the people that work for me. I'm not paying myself. I still got to live. Luckily that the stock market is doing well, my real estate is doing well. But I also had to realize, Doc, that money is energy. And I don't think that, right, as you say, we're going to get to this, because what I'm going to ask you is like, well, how do you make money? Um, is that belief that at any given point, I can go out and make money. That having this energy around that money is energy, that I can go and use my talents and time and wisdom to make money. And once I had that mindset that money will come and go, and that I should not be afraid that at some point there's going to be $0 in my account, then that just freed me. you know so my question to you, because you talk about that and we've said it on the phone, right, and you being a Jamaican, right, or a faux Jamaican, because you got 18,000, I do 18,000 things, bruh. That's a bad
Man.
Jamaican accent. But what do we tell our revolutionaries, right? What do we tell our revolutionaries who are listening to my revolution, right? I need to provide, but how do you make money, right, to thrive? That's the key. I
Right.
think that's where we drop down right there. Answer that for me. How do you make money?
Well, I'm gonna turn it back on you, but the way that I think about it, first, it's 3 parts, right? So first, it is deciding what your win, WIN, deciding what that means for you.
There it is,
That's the
revolutionary.
first thing, right? Because
There it
if you
is.
don't know where your goal line is, if you don't know where your home run fence is, how do you hit it? So first,
Mm,
have that target. And then what you do is, and you said it, money is a tool, right? But the mechanism or the wisdom around how to do it can be in multiple different ways. So first, so after you've decided where that is, then what you do is say, okay, how do I navigate the knowledge that I have, the wisdom that I can procure in a way that is substantive? Now, remember, your revolution isn't only for you. So you involve other people, you empower other people on that walk and make that thing happen. And so whether it is going to free YouTube University to learn a skill, and we laugh about it, but knowledge right now is so easy to attain. That's why
so
I
easy.
flip out
So easy.
when my kids, don't do X or don't do Y. I'm like, it's so easy to learn this skill and to be able to do this, right? When I say so easy, meaning you have time, right? Because the one thing, and again, I said it before, the 2 things in life you can't get back are time and opportunity.
Time
Sometimes
and
you got the time, you don't have the opportunity. Sometimes the opportunity is there, but you don't have the time. So once you've decided where that goalpost is, you've equipped yourself with knowledge. Then what you have to do, this is the harder part, is get over the fear of failure. I think I've failed more. And you don't hear about the losses. You only see, hey, he's developing a new program. You don't see. And the same thing, and it's good. You had another show a few months ago where you had, I guess, your former producer, your former director on, and
Rachel Graham,
you talked
the
about
Rachel
we
Graham.
we were in a closet, filming this or doing that, and people don't see that. But if they go listen to those other shows, as my dogs ring the doorbell to leave the house, I guess right now, that's, at some point I'm gonna have a soundproof room where I film this. But it is we don't see that struggle, right? I was talking to Indy Kalu, football player, defensive lineman. It was his camp, and we did a brief interview, and I said, what do you say to those people that think football is, and he's had some war wounds on him, and he said, people see the glitz and the glam. That's what social media, that's what they want to
Yes.
see. They
Yes.
don't see the grind. They don't see waking up at 5 a.m. when you're in pain. They don't see, and I think just understanding that process, right? Deciding what your win is, equipping yourself with knowledge, and then being okay with failing, being okay with the loss. I'll take that L, but I'm gonna come back with another win.
Yeah.
And I think your discussion, and this is where I'm gonna flip it on you. I want you to talk about how you pivoted from basically being this professor, coaching baseball, and saying, you know what, I want to do something for my community. I want to create a way, and it's the 3 C's that you gave me, but I use them every day. I want to create a pathway for curriculum, coaching, and capital through, again, Camelback Ventures and
Mm.
empowering other people. How did you? Because there's a lot of people that says, how are you gonna do that? What's your background in that? I just know I want to do it.
Yeah.
How did
Yeah.
you do that?
You know, Doc, I always kind of tell this story that, and you can get caught up. I want to couch this in this. You can get caught up in what others have done to get to a certain place, right? Now, don't get me wrong. There's certain hoops that you got to jump to be an MD, right? You just can't go and be like, "Oh, I'm gonna call myself a doctor today," or right, or there's certain hoops and
Touche.
things that you need to do to become a PhD, right? All the different things. Um, but at the end of the day, with at the end of the day, you can gain knowledge and time. And what happens is a lot of times knowledge comes from just being in the place around the people and listening. Not,
Right.
and that was one of the things. I didn't know venture. I didn't know venture. I didn't know entrepreneurship. I mean, here's the thing. I knew entrepreneurship, but I just didn't know the vocabulary and language like I know it now.
Mm-hmm.
Because I watched entrepreneurship. I watched my mother be an entrepreneurship, but I called her a small businesswoman, or I called her a jewelry person, right? Who she had a costume jewelry business. I've said it on the
Mm-hmm.
show. So I saw that. I saw she found a niche. She found a value prop, right? I'm gonna provide costume jewelry for a segment of the population that wears this jewelry, right? I'm gonna price it a certain place against my competitors. There were other people in the marketplace,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm gonna provide them with opportunity. So again, time and opportunity. She found it. It was a supplement. It was a supplement for her. It was a supplement to our family with all these different things. My point being, how did I move from being a professor, a teacher, a baseball coach, to now move into entrepreneurship and then to move in investment and to move in
Right.
spaces with people who have lots and lots of money and lots of expertise? I just gave it to you. I spent time. I got to give it to Aaron. I got to give it to Aaron Walker because he said thing. If you want to learn a specific field, you need to be where the people are.
That's powerful.
Listen to that, revolutionaries.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to learn a specific thing, you need to go where the people are and sit and listen and stop acting like you're the person that knows everything when you don't know shit. And you listen and you network. Let me tell you something. The wonderful thing about what I do right now, and my greatest asset has nothing to do with me. My greatest asset, Doc, is to be able to say, I know a person. That's the biggest thing, Doc. I know a person who has knowledge in this space, who knows me and is willing to give me time and that time to you. And that is that is greater than any money that I have. Well, I say that because part of that is hopefully bringing capital. But for me to learn venture and for me to learn investments, right? I had to be in space with people. I had to be willing to humble myself, and I had to be willing to accept critique and feedback. And sometimes from the harshest of critics, like, you don't know what the hell you're talking about.
But you got to be able to take that. And I think that's
you got to be able to take this. And I will say this. I will say this to Ami Magunya, all right, who was my first boss at Camelback, who was extremely hard on this doctor coming into place with this hubris, right? Who had to give her, right? I've never said this, who had to give her like my daily, like, what did I do? Or how was I sending this email? Or how was I putting this plan together? I'm like, wait a minute, I'm Dr. Corprew. That didn't mean shit. Right. And so it's funny because my employees that I used to work with when I used to be hard on them have now come back to me and said, you know what, thank you for being hard on me, because they would get upset with me. I see you, Jamal. When I used to say, don't come to me with the problem, come to me with the solution. And they used to hate, they used to run out of the room, Doc. Like, I hate you. Now that they are running their own companies and corporations, they be like,
That's
the first
crazy.
thing I say to my employees is, don't come to me with the problem, come to me with a solution. Now, all the things that Ami taught me and how to manage folks and how to plan, how to strategically plan, how to put people in spaces together are now things that I employ my own folks to do. And so that's a long answer, is that how did I get to curriculum and capital and culture and community and coaching? I spent time listening to folks who were much smarter than me and saying, you know what? I'm going to humble myself because it's only going to make me better. It's only going to make me greater. So when I walk into spaces now, oh, Dr. Corprew, we don't have someone like you in this area that has the talent, knowledge, and wisdom that you do, that looks like you.
Exactly.
But guess what I still do? I still walk into rooms and listen and humble myself because I don't know everything and I want to keep learning. Constant learning.
That's the key. I mean, you have to be a lifelong learner no matter what you do. And that's why I wanted you to articulate that path, because a lot of people, and my oldest son, he's a free spirit, probably one of the smartest people I know, but he's just happy to enjoy life. And he's showing me how to do that better. Let me say it that way. But it's one of those things where for him, knowledge and application was easy, but he felt like it kind of encumbered him to be a certain thing, to do a certain thing. And I think one of the things is he likes to know a lot about everything. You know, my dad used to have a saying. He would say, title encumbers you, or it weighs you down. Once you break away from what you think your title is, you actually can be more productive at what you do.
Oh,
right.
wow.
And it didn't dawn on me until now.
Drop down on that. Because I like being Dr. Corporal. You know what I'm saying?
It doesn't
not like I used to.
Right.
But You know, like today, I was on a call and somebody called me Mister. I was like, let me change this
Hold on.
Zoom title so you won't call me Mr. Corporate anymore. Mr. Corporate was a great man, but you know what I'm saying? Like
That's
the
not
most
me, right?
amazing man. But my name is Dr. Corporate.
No, I get it. And I think in certain spaces, it does lend itself to credibility. And I think some people like the fact, like at the football camp, I won't be Coach Bats. I won't be Coach Bulldog, but
Yeah.
I'm Doc. I'm Doc. And I think for them, they like, I like that. I want people to know that I know a person that looks like you, given the healthcare disparity we have with cardiologists, that, you know, you're one of X, right? And you're in my city. I want people to know, which is great. But when it comes to actually putting boots to the ground and getting to work and doing things, I'm Brother Bats. I'm
Yeah.
Mr. Bats. I'm
Yeah. Yeah.
Travis. I was a
Charles.
whole lot of things
Chucky.
before I was exactly. I was a whole lot of things before I was Dr. Bats. And Dr. Bats, as your guest, again, this is what, you know, I don't remember, but he talked about that's just one version of
Mhm.
who we are. But these other versions still have value, right? They
Yes.
still have the
Yes.
ability to move into spaces and be different things and to do different things for different people. And I think as long as we embrace all of them and know when to turn one on, turn one off, switch one in,
Yes.
move one out,
Yes.
I
That's
think
right.
that gives you power. And you said something.
Big
Um,
Los.
Big Los will be entering the building in a few weeks when we're on vacation. That's my vacation self. My
Big
wife
Los.
likes Los. My wife likes
I
Big
bet
Los.
she
She
does. Hey,
does.
Miss
He's a more free
Bats.
spirit. He is far more of a free spirit than
Bootsy
I am.
Collins.
I am.
Bootney
But
Collins.
you end up getting me in trouble, man. You know, Big Los is not a brand. He is a offshoot. But you said something about being able to take feedback, and I want you to put a pin there. How? Because as a man, as a black man, sometimes it's tough because a lot of times, whether we know or we don't know, one thing we're taught, whether we're striving or thriving, is to be confident. And
Yeah,
sometimes
that's
you can
true.
be confidently wrong, but you have to be
Wrong.
able to take wrong and just be, yeah,
Yes.
I know, right? And so, how do you build humility in a way where you still maintain a certain level of credit? Like, how do you teach people to take feedback? Because I think that's a skill that especially our younger brothers, so whoever coming up, don't know how to do that. They get
Yeah.
defensive. They
Yeah.
go into it with a certain mindset that I think closes them off to the opportunity to learn. So how would you counsel somebody in that space?
That's great. You got to swallow the red pill.
Okay.
You got to swallow the red pill. When I say, and I call the red pill, you've heard me say it before. The red pill is this, um, is the red pill of self-awareness. And I think that,
Mm,
and it comes at different times for everyone. You know, for me, I always say that, life really, really punched me in the gut for me really to be self-aware about myself. Right? I had to lose a lot. I had to lose a lot. I had to lose friends and money and space and time, right? Before I said, okay, it's time for me to take this red pill. And when I took this red pill, it was like, oh, 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 okay.
okay.
Like you
Something's
got work,
different.
you got work to do. And you got to figure out what this work is. And the only way to figure out what this work is to ask. And it's hard. It's hard to ask, like, am I a good person? Or have I treated you in a manner that is ill-fated or wrong? Did I make you feel bad? Why did I make you feel bad? Right? Although in my self-awareness is I can't make you feel anything. I had to realize as well. However, my actions, I still should be in my responsibility, still be treating you as a human, right? And understanding
Right.
that your humanity or your humanity is is important to me. And so I must understand that. So taking the red pill was eye-opening to me because I got to see everything about myself. Like Neo coming out of out of the
Out of
matrix
the
and
matrix,
seeing
right?
seeing himself and like, ooh, I don't really like this dude. And so I had to really humble myself, and I'm going to get to humility in a second, to say, can I take this? And it's not easy. It's not easy one for Black men, I'm going to say that, to ask the question of, I need feedback on my behavior. I need
Right.
feedback on my actions. I need feedback on what I'm saying, because the world has critiqued us so much for so long
Speak
and
on it.
told us that we were not good enough, right? At the end of the day, I shouldn't have been called Mr. Corporate today, because I know I did my homework on you. So I know that you are the president of this organization. So I give that. So, but I had to. So we've been told, and I had to pull back. But asking for feedback is part of self-awareness.
Right.
It is a part of maturity and growth that has to happen, because if we just go out into the world and interact in the world the way that we see fit, that to me lacks self-awareness. It lacks emotional intelligence. Do you
Right.
think that when President Obama walked into the White House, having never been president, that he was going to be a good president if he did not surround himself with people who were going to critique or give him feedback? Jesus himself had 12 disciples,
12.
right, to give him feedback. Understandably, one of them betrayed him,
Right.
right? You're right,
Yeah.
right. But had
You know,
12 disciples to help him, to give him feedback. And so I think that who am I to walk through the world and not accept critique, not accept feedback if I want to grow? This version of myself, Doc, is sitting, standing, jumping, right, on top of the dead versions of myself that I wanted to discard. But I could
that's
not have
powerful.
those dead versions of myself unless I had asked for feedback and critique and then internalized it. Let me say these two things. Now, it does not mean that every feedback or every critique is right, because people are malicious.
That's true.
It is up to you and your self-awareness to think about, what do I internalize? What do I take in? What do I imbibe? What do I shed from myself from that feedback? Because you could be right or you could be wrong, but I need to be able to see that. The second piece in this, and I'm sorry that I'm not as eloquent as Dr. Bat, who will give you an acronym to come along with this, right? Because I don't even
Speak
think
on it,
about
brother.
that.
Speak on it. You
Right.
dropping
But
knowledge. Keep going.
right. But what I'm saying is that there's a level of humility that says that I am still a human and don't fuck with me. You
Game
know what I'm
time.
saying? Right.
Game time.
And so, right, there's a level of humility that allows me to show up in a room and say, I acknowledge your humanity, your human, whoever you are, your personhood, right? I see you, but don't get it twisted, right?
Right.
That my humility does not mean that you can walk all over me. And I think that's the
Exactly.
thing that we think about. There's still a level, there's a fine line there's a space between hubris and humility. And you have to walk in that space where that you need to be hubris and you need to be humble, but you have to find the time when they are both necessary. Full
Exactly.
stop.
No, and you touched on it. Like those are the steps. But it goes back to understanding how to create that circle of people
Yes.
that
Yes.
will give you
Mhm.
constructive feedback and because something that I did in my younger days is I would find people that were similar enough to me that when I wanted to wild out, they would co-sign on my wilding out. They would co-sign on my decisions, and I know being in fraternity, sometimes that is easier to do. And you know what I'm talking about, right?
I
But
do.
as I continue to evolve, I still embrace people like that, but I understand that, okay, me taking that feedback and applying it as well-meaning as it is, don't fit the current version of who I am,
Yes. Mm.
right? And
Let
I
me
go
interject
ahead.
real quick. Let me just say this, and I'm sorry, I hate to do this, is that one of the things that I want people to understand, and what Doc is saying, is that ask the question of what version of me are you dealing with right now? That's the point I just want to interject, because if you're dealing with me of version 10.0 and this is version 20, right? Right? Then you need to change your manual on how you deal with me. But you got to ask the questions first, right? Because look, I used to be that version. I'm not going to say that I wasn't,
Right.
right? But what happens when we do, when we upload, right? When we imbibe new information, when we take the self-awareness, when we do different things, comport yourself in a manner that says, I see you for who you are now,
Right.
not for who you used to be.
Right.
I'm sorry, bro.
No, that because again, and if that's, I want that to be an Instagram reel, because that's the key. And I'm saying that, and I know your producers are gonna do, but that's the key, is understanding that as you evolve, you try to align yourself, but you're not gonna forget where you came from by no means. I mean, I still remember, I'm still cool with Man and Nook and all them, but at the same time,
Boot
Man,
me.
Nook and all them
Boot
know
me.
me from a different space. But that
Right.
don't mean I'm putting, but now though, this is where it gets hard. This is where you say, all right, Man, Nook, I might not take their feedback, but now I have to put myself in Man and Nook's place. I have to understand, what do I need to get them to the next level? Because your revolution isn't only for you. It doesn't
Yeah.
do any good for you to keep revolving and revolting and evolving and being this great person, but you still have those people that you had connections with, that you have connections with, that ultimately those relationships might be their only mechanism to move from survival, and this ain't a word, but to thrival, right? You want to
Thrival.
move them from surviving to thriving. And that's the true challenge of individuals such as ourselves that have attained a certain level of upward mobility, whether that be in finance or in intellect or in thought or in approach. Because sometimes it's just saying, hey, let me help reframe that mindset. When people say, well, I don't have money, I say, man, money is an easy problem. Well, you a doctor, you can say that. I said, no, you either spend less or make more. That's it. You got to make the choice, right? And at the end of the day, once you take that encumberment off, you're free to do those other things. You're free to experience what it means not to feel like you're and again, I don't want this to come from a pretentious place by no means. But when my friends reach out to me on Facebook that I knew from elementary and junior high, and we talk, we talk, and they know who I was and they know who I am. But at the end of the day, it's my job to provide them with an opportunity to see that the knowledge that you need to move at least 2 steps forward is free. It's free. There's actually one of your frat brothers back at home in Fayetteville. His name's Curran, and he was one of these brothers that was power to the people. Up, man, I'm looking at some of the stuff he's doing. A free clinic for kids. It's only 16 kids, but he's teaching them entrepreneurship. He's teaching them. It's a 6-week class, and I said, man, is this digital? He was like, nah. He's like, I know you want to help. I know you want, but I want to help my community. So I want the kids to live here, and shouts out to him. I appreciate what he's doing, but he is living that space. And again, does he have a lot of people cheering for him? He does it a little different, right? He's not the one that's going to be at the football games and doing this. He the one that's going to have kids in an office learning how to type. Right. So he got a different approach that doesn't vibe well with a lot of people, but I respect it because he's preparing them for the next iteration of what the world is going to ask for them in terms of being ready to survive, ready to thrive in that space.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think as we grow, we have to move from survival to thriving. And thriving, if we're going to take this into the space that we've been talking, thriving begins with doing the inner work. Doing the inner work. And it goes back to our first tenet. You have to revolt. To thrive, you have to revolt from something. Right? You have to revolt from something if you're thriving, if you want to get to thriving, because thriving looks like something else. Even if you say, I'm thriving this area, there are other areas in your life where you're still surviving. How do you move to that? Where I can look at the encapsulation of my life and be like, ooh, I'm thriving here. I'm thriving here. I'm thriving.
Right.
And it takes work. But here's the other piece, Doc, and you're going to say that, is that you've got to go through chaos. You gotta
That's part of the
and
process.
what I realize right now, that what I've been going through is that I've been going through chaos in my life. God has said, you know what? I'm going to show you chaos in your life. I'm going to show you what loss looks like tremendous loss. And I remember, Doc, like during the pandemic and all the things, right? I'm like, oh, things are still pretty good, right? I'm seeing all this death, I'm seeing all this loss, but I ain't lost anything yet.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I ain't lost anything. Pandemic started, I ain't lost anything yet. 2022 came, and God was like, now's your time. I want you to see what chaos and loss looks like. And let me see what you got. Because on the other side of this loss, sometimes, right, I don't know what's going on right now. Sometimes God, the universe, whatever, says, I'm going to strip away some things for you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right? You've been moving in a direction, and this ain't the direction for you. So every time you move it, I'm going to strip this way. I'm going to show you what loss is. Because when you get to the point where you're going to gain, you're going to understand why you had those losses. You're going to understand why you went through chaos to get to thriving. That's the piece, right? And understanding that the discomfort of chaos and loss will teach you. Sometimes you have to strip down to the barest sense to say, oh, I don't need this in my closet. I don't need you in my life, right? I don't need this. Because sometimes thriving is not having all of the things. Sometimes thriving is just having the bare essence, right? The necessity, right? If I look at Dr. Batts, the necessity are his children, are his wife, are his home. That's thriving. The ability, right? What happens is breaking down the bare essence for his ability to create 18,000 different programs for the kids, right? Is thriving because the bare essence of his life is just those core things. Me, I didn't need all the distractions. God was like, look, we're going to strip you of all these distractions so you can see what thriving looks like. I'm going to show you. Yes, I've never said this before. I've said God a lot on this show today. But it's
Well, it is
interesting.
central.
It is central. Whatever you believe in, and that's why I use the show. Whatever you believe in, whoever your God, whoever your higher power is, right? There
I
will
think
be tests, and I
exactly.
know.
And if you look at it again, and I don't want to be too preachy, but that's my background. If you look at any big events, any good events, it came from struggle in the biblical sense. Whether it is the birth of a new world due to a flood, whether it is a young man coming of age in battling a giant, whether it is three young men thrown into a fiery furnace because of their beliefs, whatever it is. And again, that is a largely uh, biblically centric approach, but ultimately it boils down to a concept of holy humility, right?
Mm,
Where by humbling yourself and realizing I'm not as big as I think, and we've all experienced that, but then using it to propel you to that next level, that next
yeah,
iteration. Because what I tell whenever there's a loss, and it's easy after a football game, and we have that loss, I say, well, the good thing is now when we fix those problems, we only can go up, right? But when you look at loss and say that this is where I'm going to stay, understanding that there are ebbs and flows in this whole loss and gain relationship, right? You have to understand that. And what you did, you took it and said, man, this is tough. And I know
it's hard.
when you lost your dad, I felt it,
Yeah,
right? Because it's a different version, and I heard, again, I listened to the Toon Show. You are a daddy's boy. You wanted
man,
to spend time with him.
all the
And
time.
when he came to your baseball game, you did better. I had that same experience. And
Yeah,
and for me, it was tough because I lost my dad before I lost my dad, right? Through
yeah,
his dementia, he couldn't
yeah,
appreciate many
yeah.
of the things
Not at
that
all.
that I had done due to his. But it was when it took me that low, what I said was, man, I got to show up for my kids. Man, I got
Yeah,
to show up for the kids in my community that might not have someone to be that role model. Man, how do I empower other men to do the same thing? And again, and I know you kind of like my acronyms, but this month I was highlighted to be one of the key people to talk about men's health. But as I started to unpack it and discuss it for my hospital, I said these are tenets that anyone can use. You don't have to be men, but they're the three P's. Three P's. You ready for them? So the first
Tell
one
me,
is that
please.
your, the first one is your approach to health, wellness, your ideology to thriving has to be preventive first. You have to
Mm-hmm.
set up strategies to insulate yourself against things that might be problematic. Now, we know that there's 7 dimensions of wellness, right? And so let's just say from a financial standpoint, you can't be secure to really, to really embrace what you want to do because you haven't taken care of those things. Get those things fixed.
Yeah.
My wife today said something that was beautiful. She said, I like to procrastinate. I said, no, I just prioritize differently. But ultimately, having her to help me say, no, get this stuff done, from that preventive state is preventing me from before I can move forward. And I still got stuff behind me that needs to get done. She helps. So that's the first one, preventive. The next one, and this is the one that's hard for people, it's got to be practical. And you said this early on. You said there are some steps that you need to take before you can be a doctor, before you can be a successful venture capital, so be practical in where you think your next step would be. That's not where you're going to end, but that's the next place you need to
Mm,
go.
mm,
And as you
mm,
start to
mm,
take those
mm,
practical
mm.
steps, it allows you to make that next leap. Now, this next one, after you've been preventive, after you've been practical, this next one is the one that it's the one I like. It's
You gotta
got
be
to
power. You gotta be
be
powerful. You gotta be powerful.
performance based.
Performance based.
Because
Okay.
at the end of the day, we all have to perform. We all have to put a product out. And whatever, if that product is a better version of you, if that product is a youth program, if that product is an international podcast that reaches millions across the world, it's got to be performance based. You got to be able to flip that switch, turn that on, be preventive, be practical. Because, and I'm going to ask you this, when you did your first show and I listened to it, it didn't have the crisp, clean version. It didn't. I don't even know if there was video done on the show. If it
Oh
was,
no, there
then
was no
it might
video.
have been a
There was no
videotape.
video.
No
Not
video, right?
whatsoever.
But when
None.
you started, then your next step, that next practical step, was okay. I'm gonna cover New Orleans, but I want to reach X. I want to reach Y. That was that next practical step, and then I'm gonna start getting people on that the city speaks to. That this because if you listen to those shows, it revolted and evolved over time. And I'm like, oh, this is how you make an award-winning show. And you took all those steps from a preventive standpoint. You're like, okay, I've been on radio, but this is a little different. Let me bring in some
Yeah.
heavy hitters. Let me add some people to my circle. You created that preventive bubble. And then you moved on and made practical steps forwards. And then from a performance standpoint, it's just leveling up every time. Even now, I
Every
mean, we
time.
joked about
Every
it.
time.
New camera, new setup, new that. Hey, let me take it to the next iteration. I don't want this to be, but again, preventive, practical, performance based. There we go.
I love it. And thank you, brother, for I, I want you to understand the gratitude that I have for you as you are I feel like you are the show's historian. um because and the way that you put that analogy into so much perspective in the context of the show, you're right. We started out you've heard the etiology of this. We started out in a cubicle. Like it felt like a cubicle, and where we've come and where we've been, new camera, new camera now. So I wanted to be like you, where I could see your pores.
You change the
Uh,
circle. Change the circle.
you know what I'm saying? Exactly. But it is, and thinking about that, right? Thinking about those 3 Ps and revolutionaries. I think that we probably need to put a handbook together and go back and put all of these acronyms together that Dr. Bax has given us because they give us life, right? They truly give us life, right? Shout out again, like Corey Doolittle, you're gonna have to give me like sponsorship dollars as much as I said your name. But interestingly enough, we think about this, right? What this show does now, right? And think about this, right? The performance base of this show, where we have taken this show with the addition of like you to the show, people are getting promoted because of the information that is being dropped on this show, right? To think about that, the turf that Dr. Batts dropped a couple of episodes ago when we talked about
While
diversity,
back.
equity, inclusion,
I
now
remember
is
that.
being incorporated into how folks are showing up for job interviews. And right, because and thinking about being able to imbibe that information and then to be able to spout it out into your own personal philosophy, right, is performance based, because we didn't think about that. I didn't think about this in 2017, but at the beginning of this year, I thought about who do I want to spend time with to educate you revolutionaries, to have a good time with, to laugh, to be vulnerable with, to enjoy space with, and to teach. And to teach about what it means to be a revolution in your life, in your community, and for this world. And I said, there's only one person, but he wasn't available. So I got Dr. Travis.
Love it. I was waiting. I said, something's going to
He
happen.
wasn't.
Something's
No,
about to
that was Dr.
happen.
Travis Batts. And so where this show goes and where it's been only begins to intensify, right? And we have the addition of the chorus of
You knew it.
the Cocker Spaniel Doolittles. What kind of dogs are they?
They are mini golden doodles.
Golden Doodles. That's
golden
right.
doodles.
The golden
Bentley and Miles are their name. Bentley and Miles.
Bentley and Miles. Well, I love that. But Dr. Betts, I just want to say, because our time has run, and thinking about the 3 Ps and where we're going to go, revolutionaries, like, we're fortunate. I say we because I am one of you, right? We are fortunate to have Dr. Batts to be a friend of the show and to be my dear friend and a friend to you, because without Dr. Batts, we don't get better, right? We don't allow dead versions of us to lie on the ground so we can get better. Dr. Batts makes us better. He makes us revolutionary. And so I want to extend my gratitude to you. I want to extend your gratitude to Mrs. Batts for allowing you to give us this hour. I know you got a track meet to go to. But brother, close us out as you do so eloquently.
Well, I will say this again, that gratitude that you exude and that you express is certainly reciprocated. And for the revolutionaries, what I would say is I love reading some of the comments, not only from our shows, but for all the shows. They're not only uplifting, they are empowering. And to be honest, they are energizing in a way that allows me to say, okay, how do I show up better? How do I do this? Not only for this show, but for other individuals in my community. But as you look at the balance between thriving and surviving, ask yourself, number one, how do you evolve? How do you revolt to make thriving your goal, right? We
Yes.
talked about the 3 Ps, but it's tough when you feel like you're in a space where you can't move or you don't have the right circle around you. Stand up, look around, and ask yourself, where do you want to be? And you have to take that first step. And I'm saying have to, and I'm not just talking to you, I'm talking to me too. My wife got on me today about not understanding the value of rest, not understanding the value of I don't take sabbaticals. I want to know what that is. I want to learn, right? She got on me, right? Because I do too many jobs, man. But at the end of the day,
jobs, man.
But at the end of the day, I would say continue to empower yourself, continue to surround yourself, and to continue to embrace yourself and tell you that you are valued, you are worthy, and you have the opportunity to change the world one step at a time.
Right. That you, like Dr. Batts, are a revolution. And so we will see you the next time, right? And as we say here, always on this show, we, Dr. Batts and I, want you to be able to fill what we think is the most thought-provoking question of your life. Dr. Batts.
You ready?
Yeah.
Let's go.
What's your revolution?
What's your revolution?
There we go. There we go. We love you. We love you. And we will see you. Make sure, I always want to give a shout out to the what podcast?
The About That Life podcast with Dr. Batts, where we focus on life or living intentionally forever.
Did you hear that? Living intentionally forever, right? You can see me and Dr. Batts like, hey, Dr. Batts, you ready to do the
that came, you don't realize that came from you. Because on my first show, basically Rockstar Cardiologist teaches you how to live forever or
There you
live
go.
100 years. It was something of that nature. And I'm
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
man,
yeah. How
that's
to live
catchy.
forever.
How
Rockstar
to live
Coach,
forever.
how to live forever.
See,
Well,
you
we're
birthed
gonna live
that.
forever.
Boom.
Boom. We love you. We'll see you soon, Revolutionaries. Peace.